أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد الله وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد في الأولين، اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد في الآخرين، اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد في الملأ الأعلى. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال ألم أقل لك إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. The verse in question from Surah Al-Kahf in the Holy Quran is a discussion that occurs between two of the greatest personalities in history of Islam, one of which being amongst the 5 greatest prophets ever to walk this earth, by the name of Nabi Allah Musa, and the other is between, well, there's a debate around it and surrounding it whether he was a prophet or Abdun Salih, but this personality's name is Khudr. And Khudr, as we know, is one of those personalities that in traditions are alive until today and will be of those that will be one of the people of the utmost importance in the army and in the government of Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Allahumma. Now this discussion occurs after many years in the life of Nabi Allah Musa, whereby after he's done all that he has done, after the passing of his brother Harun, and towards the end of his life, he was asked a question. That question was, O Nabi Allah, are you the most knowledgeable of all that reside on this earth? And Nabi Allah Musa, being Kalimullah, thought to himself, let me ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see, as a prophet, one of the 5 Ulul Azm, one of the greatest, do I have the most knowledge over anyone in this earth? Allah says no. There is one that is more knowledgeable than you. And then he gives him a direction to go towards and wards to find Al-Abdul Salih and this personality of Khudr. Now the discussion now surrounds this particular verse in question, where Khudr, after Musa comes at the end of his life as a prophet, that we understand there are different types of knowledge. Now when it comes to this, Khudr says towards Musa these particular lines, where he says, you, I am sure, will not have the patience to learn alongside me, alluding to the fact that knowledge is not something that we should take for granted. As much as we'll find an influence from the ahadith, from the Quran, about how much we need to gain within our life. And there are many traditions. I'll mention one of them, stating, اطلبوا العلم من المهد إلى اللحد, meaning from cradle towards your grave, you should be in a constant process of gaining knowledge, bettering yourself, allowing it to influence you in your everyday life, your movements, your worship, your relationships, your understanding. And that's why when we go towards traditions, Kumail ibn Ziyad says, one day I was walking alongside Amir al-Mu'mineen fi dhahr al-Kufa, meaning the back of Kufa, which is now known as Najaf. And he says to me the following famous lines. He says, Ya Kumail, an-nas asnafun thalatha. There are 3 groups of people in this world. Alimun Rabbani, a godly scholar, let's say, عالم رباني. طالب على سبيل النجاة. A student of religion. A person that wants to gain knowledge on this path of salvation that they should attain. And thirdly, he says, همج رعاع ينعقون مع كل نائق. Meaning, these third group of people are those that whenever someone makes a noise, they make the same noise. A wind blows them right, they are blown right. Another wind blows them left, they blow with the wind as well. They don't have an opinion of themselves. They don't follow based on knowledge, but rather the atmosphere that they're in, the environment that they're in, the leader that they have, they would follow without asking questions or not having knowledge behind what they do. Now, as a discussion that is of the most important discussions within this particular month, that we begin to see that during this time after Imam Hussain passes away until the banner of Imam Hussain will be raised again under the name of Yali Tharat al-Hussain, you'll find constantly there is a movement of people inside the camp of Imam al-Hussain from other camps, let's say the camp of Yazid, metaphorically speaking about the good and evil within this world. And as time goes by, you'll find people from the camp of Hussein leaving the camp through their a'mal, through their actions, through their inclinations, and joining the camp of Yazid. That's a very simplified way to think about it. However, in its essence, that's what's occurring within our lives. And that's why we have these particular periods of time. So we need to learn from what occurred in Karbala to apply within ourselves. And that's why when we really think about the wordings, and I love speaking about the words of Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because sometimes we read it. Sometimes we'll learn it off by heart. But not many times we actually contemplate over the depth of what is trying to be said. Amongst the traditions that are there, and how we can utilize this particular month and these particular holy nights in order for us to perfect ourselves, all of us say this one tradition. When Rasulullah goes towards Mi'raj in his ascension, when he returns, amongst the things that he's asked about, when he comes in, one of the companions by the name of Ubay ibn Ka'b, he says, as Imam al-Hussain enters, Rasulullah replies to him by saying, glad tidings to the one in which has illuminated this earth and the skies. So Ubay says, aren't you Zaynus Samawati wal Ard, Ya Rasulullah? He says, Hussein is greater in the sky than he is on this earth. So I want you to think about that tradition. Hussein is greater in the sky than he is on this earth. And I want you to imagine what Imam al-Hussain is now to the Shia around the world in Muharram. How great he is. He says he's much greater in the heavens than he is on this earth. So he says, I by Allah that when I went in my ascension, I saw on the pillars of the Arsh of the throne, ala saq al-Arsh, inscribed the famous words, as we all know, Inna al-Hussain misbahu hudan wa safinatu najat. That Hussein is a beacon of light and an ark of salvation. Now, just these two words. These two words. We say, yeah, we're going to use him to guide us. That is the general synopsis of this particular tradition, that we understand it. But if we break it down truly, Misbah, lantern, Hudan, guidance. Question is, when do you really need a misbah in your life? If there's light, or if it's daytime, if you can see your path, you don't need a lantern, do you? It is when you cannot see your path that you need a lantern. That you do not know if you take the next step, will you fall in a pit? Will you drown in an ocean? Because you're not able to see the next step. This world is dhulamat. Darkness within darkness within darkness. The Quran says when a person takes his hand out in the midst of the night, he can't see it. It says Hussein in such a world is a misbah, is the lantern that will allow you to see what's in front of you, allow you to be not just seeing in front of you, otherwise you'll just be a lantern. That in itself should be enough that you can see using him. But he says, no, he's the lantern of guidance. Not only he says he's going to open the way in front of you, he's going to guide you to where to follow. Number one. Number two, and the Ark of Salvation. Safina to Najat. Safina, let's say ship, boat. Najat, salvation. When you put it into essence, you put one and one together, it means it's a rescue boat. So he says, I look at Imam Hussain as a rescue boat. If I am not drowning in the ocean of sin, then why do I need to be rescued? Hussain is for those that are drowning in their sins, drowning in this dunya, that are overwhelmed with what they have, with the weight of the sins that they have, with how much they have gone astray. He's there. A rescue boat is not one that you go towards, subhanallah. And we're going to discuss that. The rescue boat is the one that comes and sees where you are and picks you up and takes you to salvation, doesn't it? And that's why when we're going to discuss in tonight's lecture is the movement of Imam Al-Hussain. And how delicate this point is, because there are three groups in Karbala. The first point of tonight is we want to analyze the three different groups that were there in Karbala. What are the similarities between them? What are the differences? Because there comes a point in everyone's life where we call it the days of separation. When it's easy, when it's peaceful, everyone is getting along with one another. But when days of difficulty comes, that's when it separates the people into different faculties, different groups. And we're going to look at, on the first level, the different groups that were there in Karbala. Secondly, we want to discuss the different types of knowledge. Thirdly, the different types of ignorance that is there. And finally, what are the tools that all those that oppose Ahlul Bayt have been utilizing to deviate people away from the path? And how can we learn to overcome them and join the camp of Imam Al-Hussain? Please help me in blessing the majlis and illuminating our hearts and minds with three of your loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. The days of separation. They say amongst the first days that the Muslims were tested, that they were once upon a time in a very comfortable state, and now there is a difficult situation that's in front of them. A difficult choice that is in front of them. A choice that would divide a father from his son. Brothers, uncles, best of friends. Because there is a difficult choice that lays in front of you. In Badr, they say, was amongst the first of these difficult choices. When you had to go out, and the people that were on the other sides were your supposedly brothers, fathers, uncles, because once upon a time, only a few years earlier, you all lived in Mecca peacefully. You all lived alongside each other in the same houses. But now, when the truth is out, there is a level of difficulty. And that's why when we find a person comes towards Rasulullah, he says, "Oh Rasulullah, I love you." The reply of Rasulullah may be very strange to some, but it makes complete sense for us as Shia. He says, "Ista'idda lil-faqr." Prepare yourself for poverty, starvation, difficult instance. He says, what else? He says, "I also love Ali ibn Abi Talib." He says, then prepare yourself for calamities. You begin to see now the people that have the road in front of them with great difficulty, that have been opposed in every angle, but still hold the banner of Imam Al-Hussain high, are those lovers. So they were there in the time of Rasulullah in poverty. Once upon a time they were thriving. Khadija, amongst the women that thrived in Mecca, doesn't have a shroud to cover her body. So you'll find all of a sudden the difficulty is there. Badr was one of those moments where you had to go against all those people and you had to make a we had to make a very difficult choice. And so that you begin to see those that accompanied Rasulullah against all odds. The reason why the number 313 is of the utmost importance is because at the beginning of Islam, they made that choice, that difficult choice against all odds. And that number, you'll see, that is very significant throughout Islamic history. And that's why the number of those that come alongside Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman will be the same as those that made that difficult choice in Badr, 313. Now, when it comes towards Karbala, there are three groups in the discussions amongst the scholars. They say the first group is the group that faltered, the ones that went astray. The second group are the ones that just made it to safety, but with great difficulty. And the third group is the one that chose quite easily that which is right from that which is wrong. The first group, let's look at their qualities. I want you to really look at one particular point when I discuss their qualities. I want you to look at how similar their qualities are with the qualities that we have. Look at the similarities. They say that these people that have gone astray, that have lost in this particular days of separation, they were the losers in these days. Their qualities were that they weren't always leaning towards that which is evil. They wanted the pleasure of Allah. They loved to be practicing in their faith towards Allah. They followed the truth as they understood it. Second quality, they loved to work for their dunya as well as their akhirah. They love to work for their dunya as well as their akhirah. And that's why you'll find these people that oppose, you begin to read their biographies. Many of them were learners of the Holy Quran. Many of them were people that saw Rasulullah, fought alongside Rasulullah. The 10th of Muharram, there was another jama'ah, wasn't there? Under the flag of Umar ibn Sa'ad. So you can't say they didn't pray. They didn't fast. They didn't go to Hajj. They wanted their akhirah. They also wanted dunya. We also want akhirah. We also want dunya, don't we? So now all the categories are the same. What's the difference here? They said that for them, at their level, their love for their dunya overcame their love for the akhirah. They became at an instance where they begin to analyze that I can see my dunya. I'm working towards that which I see. The akhirah I'm still having in reserve, but I'm not putting as much effort. I'm doing the bare minimum to scrape through because I want to focus on my dunya. I love both. I'm not neglecting my praise. I'm not neglecting Psalm. I'm not neglecting any of that. But I have a more of an inclination towards my dunya. Now let's put our perspective in that. There is an example that's given within history. Because Imam Hussain, in his journey from Mecca towards Karbala, interestingly enough, what do we say? Safinatun Najat, he goes and tries to rescue people. But it's up to the people if they want to come onto that ship or not. Amongst the people that he visits on his way, there are many tents that he visited to try to allow them to attain salvation. Amongst the tents was a companion by the name of Ubaydullah ibn al-Hurr al-Ju'fi. Remember the name. This personality fought alongside Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen in Siffin. One of the nights he decides, I'm going to leave the army of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib and join the ranks of Muawiyah. No one heard from him. Long story short, an occurrence occurred where they thought that he died because they didn't know where he was. One day he was with the army and one day he wasn't. So they assumed him dead or amongst the dead. So they went back towards Kufa, where Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen established his government, and he had a wife that, because they told her that he passed away, went on to remarry. The story is he returns, surprises everyone with his presence, goes towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, A, B, C. My wife is still my wife. Why is she married? Please, can you use your justice to rule between us? So Amir al-Mu'mineen begins to tell him, why did you leave the army? You know that you followed the path that is not the godly path. You've left the truth and you've gone towards falsehood. Amir al-Mu'minin begins talking to him. You look at the reply of this Ubaydullah. He says, أَوْيَمْنَعْنِي ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَدْلِكَ يَا عَلِي. Does what I have done veil me from your justice, O Ali? He says, no, of course not. So he rules in his favor, assists him in gaining his wife back. Imam al-Hussain notes this. He knows the personality Ubaydullah ibn al-Ju'fi has. When he comes into the tents, look at the tradition. It says when Imam al-Hussain, imagine, Imam al-Hussain puts his tent, leaves his tent and goes to the tent of this personality. The tradition says, look at the beauty of Imam al-Hussain. It says, as he walked, he was surrounded by children because they loved to be in his presence. He enters the tent of Ubaydullah ibn al-Hur and he begins to tell him, Hur, you have a very bad position with us, but I want to guarantee you salvation if you come towards us. Look at the words of Hur. Ubaydullah ibn Hur, sorry. Not to be mixed with Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. Different personalities. Ubaydullah ibn al-Hur al-Ju'fi, Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, totally different personalities. Ubaydullah ibn Hur al-Ju'fi, when the Imam enters, he says to him, I know that you have a bad position with us, but I want to give you a chance to gain that position back and be in the good books with Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look at the reply of Ubaydullah ibn al-Hur. He says, O Hussein, I know whomever follows you will attain salvation. I know without a doubt. He goes, however, my heart is attached to the dunya. I know if I come with you, I'm going to die. And I know that I will attain a rank. But my livelihood is attached towards the dunya. I can't bring myself to go alongside you. But this is my horse. Never have I chased anyone unless I have caught them. Never have I run away. I don't know why he's telling Imam Hussain, I've never run away. Never have I run away from anyone except that I've escaped. And take this sword of mine with you. Never have I struck unless I've cut something in half. Let's put it in our position. Sometimes there are difficult situations that we have to make. And we say, you know what, I don't want to sacrifice. So not saying ourselves, our time, our money, but this thing that I have, take it for your benefit. Imam al-Hussain says, I've come for your soul to attain salvation. You're giving me worldly things. What am I to do with these worldly things? I want you to put that into perspective for us and what we do for Allah. What we do for our Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. What do we give up for him? Or are we just waiting? Like Ubaydullah ibn al-Hur. Do we just give from that which is excess? Or do we give hard earned? In the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَعَرَضَ وَجْهَهُ عَنْهُ. Hussein turns his face from him. Those characteristics might be in us. Imagine the Hussein of our time turning his face from us. Could we handle it? Let's learn from history. The first group of people, their downfall was the fact that even though they wanted dunya and akhirah, they were attached to dunya more than they had an attachment to akhirah. That's why we have the example of Umar ibn Sa'd that we're going to get to very shortly. The second group of people are the ones that just attained safety, but with great difficulty. Why? They have the same characteristics. They are in search of truth. They want to attain a level in the eyes of Allah. They also love dunya and they also love akhirah. And they work for their dunya and they work for their akhirah. The difference between these two groups is that the second group does not allow themselves to be attached to the dunya as much as the first. They still have an attachment, but they would not allow the attachment of the dunya to hinder their choices that they have to make for their akhirah. And that's why I say it comes with great difficulty. Do not let that which you have own you. Make sure that you understand that you're the one that owns it. You know, there's many personalities in history that we need to understand from. Because many of us, you know, the dunya, in these cases, it's not something that, you know, sometimes you think, oh, do not be a person that has the nicest clothes, the nicest cars, the nicest houses. No. The halal of Allah should be halal for His servants before everyone else. If you've attained it in the right manner, there is no problem. Why? Because your dunya and your akhirah in salam. Have the best cars, have the best houses, have the best clothing, best experiences. But do not let it affect you making the right choices for your akhirah. That is the point here. There's a personality that even Rasulullah would revere within history because of these traits. These people were not Muslim, but they were revered because of this particular traits, that it did not matter what they had in their possession, from luxury, from glamour, from status. They'd never let that which they have or they've attained dictate how they would act. They would have control over it. Hatim al-Ta'i, for example. Rasulullah, when he captured his daughter in one of the battles, he found out that this was the daughter, Safana bint Hatim al-Ta'i. He says, I want to release you as a prisoner in honor of your father. He says, what about for me? He goes, in honor of you, I'm going to release all those with you. Who is this Hatim al-Ta'i that Rasulullah had such great respect for? Because of a quality that he had. A quality. They say that Hatim al-Ta'i once, and this is one of the many stories that are there, had a horse like no one else had. And they said, you know, Hatim, they always say that this person is known for his generosity, that nothing that he has in his possession he's not willing to give up. Doesn't matter. He'll give up anything. Nothing is of value to him. Nothing owns him. Nothing makes him influenced to make a choice. He says that once they had a horse that no one in Arabia had. You know, you can look at it if you know the horses and their value, or you can look at it to be a limited edition car, a one of one basically. You know, no one else has it. So they say 3 different tribes would come forward and say, look, we're all going to ask him and let's see what he does. No way he's going to give it to us. So they say that the 3 different individuals came to visit. Amongst the Arabs, the traditions is when you come and visit, amongst the traditions is 3 days and 3 nights. You are given meals, you are given a place to stay, no questions asked. After the 3rd day, if you haven't moved on, they'll begin to ask questions. So they say during these 3 days that these 3 that were there, they wanted to ask him, you know, and they see that, you know, he's not living such a lavish lifestyle, you know. So all of a sudden on the 3rd day, amongst the things that he gives and offers to them is a beautiful soup. They're like, we've never tasted a soup like this in our life. Never tasted. They finish, it's the 3rd day, they're about to head off. Please tell me, why have you come? He says, honestly, we are from these tribes and we are the heads of them. We wanted to come to ask you to gift us your horse. So he looks at them, he says, I'm so sorry. I'm not able to gift it to you. He says, they say that Hatim al-Ta'i is the one. He's very generous. Nothing owns him. You don't want to give the horse to me? He goes, no. Had I still had the horse, I would have given it to you, no problem. But he goes, but yesterday I ran out of cattle. I sacrificed the horse in order for me to give you soup. I want you to really imagine, like, to have that kind of character within yourself, that nothing is of value except your own soul, your personality, your principles that you live by. The example here is, yes, the second group of people are there. The difference is they did not have an attachment to the dunya like the first group. The third group is the ones that are in the safe zone. The ones that they were never attached to begin with. Never attached to begin with. The examples are there in Karbala. Ali Akbar, Qasim, Abbas. Look at the words that they use. They were never attached. It becomes very easy for them. Very easy to leave this dunya. Amir al-Mu'mineen as a Khalifa. A Khalifa. I want you to imagine the first Khulafa and Amir al-Mu'mineen. I want you to compare their lavish lifestyles. The castles built. The wealth that they had. And then I want you to think about Amir al-Mu'mineen in his Khilafah in Kufa. Kumail says he's moving his garments. He says he's doing a lecture and he's talking to the people and he's like, and Kumail's like, every time Imam Ali says something, I'm always like questioning him. So he says, I'm going to remember that, I'm going to ask him. Sermon finishes, comes to him. Imam Ali, Khalifa of the time. Kumail's like, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I know everything you do is for a reason. He says, is there a secret behind this movement of your abaya? He says, no, Kumail. I'm the Khalifa? He says, yeah. He says, Allah is my witness. I have 2 garments and 2 garments only. I've washed it and wore it, but it hasn't dried yet. Hasn't dried yet. He says, there's a statement that says that my aba, I have patched it so many times, حتى استحييت من راقعها. The one that sews the patches for Amir al-Mu'mineen? Was who? Was Imam Hussain, the one that used to patch it up for him. He goes, I was embarrassed how many times I took it towards my son to patch it up for me. People come to him and says, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, we want you to give us money to assist us. One of his servants would come, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, a man's at the door, he wants this much amount of money. He says, no problem, give him. He says, do I give him gold and silver or silver? Which one? Amir says, whichever one benefits him more. فَكِلَاهُمَا عِنْدِي سَوِيًّا. He goes, I see both of them as the same thing. Doesn't make a difference. Yellow or white, silver or gold. To Ali, it's a rock. Nothing of the same matter. I'm not attached to this dunya of yours. That's why he says, طَلَّقْتُكِ ثَلَاثَةٌ لَا رَجْعَةَ لِي فِيهَا. I've divorced you, O dunya, 3 times. Don't come back towards me. Don't come back towards me. Such was the personalities in the 3rd category. Now when we begin to analyze the closeness of the first and second, we begin to realize something. That the point of separation is important here. The point of separation is that moment you have to make the choice. The first example, the one that has an attachment to dunya, is the example of Umar ibn Sa'd. The point in which he had to make the choice. Because at every moment, the people in group 1 and group 2 tried to avoid making a choice. Umar ibn Sa'd, when the letter from Ibn Ziyad reached him, the first reply is like, I don't want to make a choice. اعفني منه يا أمير. It says, leave this from me, please. Give it to someone else. This position that you're putting me in. He's trying to get himself away from making a choice. So he says, no, either you do it or I strip away mulk al-ray. Either you do it or I take away the mulk al-ray from you. So he says, give me 1 night in order for me to think about it. Straight away, you're telling someone, give me a night to think about it. You've already lost the argument with Ibn Ziyad. So Ibn Ziyad's like, this guy's weak. So his nephew speaking to him, he goes, do you really think, his name's Hamza bin Ibn al-Mughira bin Shu'bah. His nephew says, do you really think that you're going to go and fight Imam Hussain? Surely losing everything in this dunya, losing everything that you have, is better for you than fighting this man. Lose everything, your mulk, your life, your livelihood, everything in your possession. But don't go and fight this man. He says, you know what, you're right, nephew. Let me go tomorrow and talk to him. So the next day he goes to Ibn Ziyad. The second attempt to remove himself from making that decision that will separate his path. He says, Ibn Ziyad, أعفني يا أمير. This is not for me, give it to someone else. And he begins to tell him a few names of nobles in Kufa. أعفني. He says, no, either you do it, mulk al-ray is taken from you. They say that after accepting that night, he couldn't sleep. Why? Because now he's about to make a choice. Either he goes with his 4,000 men that were there, or he loses everything in dunya, but the attachments in dunya. That's why the phrase that we stated a few nights ago, أَأَتْرُكُمُ الْكُرَّيْ وَالرَّيُّ مُنْيَتِي أَمْ أَرْجَعْ مَأْثُومًا بِقَتْلِ حُسَيْنِ, was him speaking about this. All night he was repeating these two lines, they would say. Repeating, do I lose Mulk al-Ray and that's all I want from this dunya because I'm attached, or do I return with the bloodstains of Hussein on my hands? He's made his choice. Hur also made a choice. Hur and Umar ibn Sa'ad, there's a massive comparison between them two. They were both of them, heads of their tribes. Both of them were the generals of their armies. Both of them very well respected in the community. Both of them in a guaranteed position upon victory. Guaranteed. They get governorships after the victory against Hussein. Both of them. But Hur wasn't as attached to the dunya. Wasn't as attached to the dunya as he was attached to the akhirah. And that's why when one of his companions says, I saw Hur in such a state where in Karbala he was trembling. Where do you think that trembling is from? Because right now you're making a choice. You're at that point of separation. Either I go to heaven or hell. Either I fight Hussein or I will be one of his companions. That point of separation is Hur untangling himself from the attachments of this dunya. Untangling himself from the attachments of this dunya. When you're untangling yourself, it's not an easy task. Not an easy task. If you take Hur as a guideline, you begin to see what happened to Hur. That's why his companion says, had anyone told me who is amongst the most brave, they said, I would not hesitate to say you, O Hur, why do I see you in such a state? That's why. Because he's at the point of making a difficult choice. And that choice is heaven or hell. He says, I am not going to choose anything besides heaven. And where is heaven except under the feet of Hussein? And that's why you begin to see the second people. The third group, understandably, without a shadow of doubt, are like those that had no attachment to dunya. No attachment. And that's why they wanted eagerly to fight each other to go first, to return back towards Allah. Ali al-Akbar, he sees Imam Hussain saying, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. لما استرجعت يا أبي. Why do you pronounce the formula for the return? He says, it's as if I see a rider saying alongside us, you are moving and death is moving alongside you. He says, ألسنا على الحق? Are we not on the truth? He says, بلى. He says, فلا نبالي. We will go towards that which is destined for us like those that are steadfast on the truth. Al-Qasim in Karbala, what does he say when he's questioned? He's questioned, how do you see death? How do you see this difficult choice in Karbala that you're going to either die or you want to remain alive in this world? It's a choice you have to make. What's the reply? أحلى من العسل, sweeter than that of honey. Now we begin to see how close it actually is. How close we can go from the camp of Hussein to the camp of Yazid. Very fine margins. When someone asks us, will you fight alongside the Imam of your time or go against him? It's not the fact that I can reply with my tongue. My actions are what speaks for me. That's why Imam Hussain has a very famous statement where he says about the people that they are abid of the dunya. الناس عبيد الدنيا والدين لعق على ألسنتهم. That this religion is just words uttered on their mouths. And that's why when we come across different personalities throughout history, so we don't have enough time tonight to discuss the intricacies of the tools that are being used to divert us. But inshallah, in the upcoming nights, we're going to discuss the tools that they utilize to deviate us from the true path. But to give you a touch or a taste of how we take into the discussion that people can utter the words of religion, but their actions say something else. They say, Kumail again, Amir al-Mu'mineen. How much can we learn from this Kumail? With Amir al-Mu'mineen, he passes a house in Kufa and he's listening to the words from Surah Al-Zumar, Ayah 9. أَمَّنْ هُوَ قَانِتٌ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ سَاجِدًا وَقَائِمًا. So Kumail says, in my heart, I thought to myself, what a beautiful voice. What a beautiful recitation. This man, without a doubt, will be a man of God. A man that is close. Otherwise, he wouldn't be reciting in the beautification that he is. He says, I thought it where? Not on my tongue. I thought it in my heart. He says, Amir al-Mu'min looks at me and he says, Ya Kumail, لا يغرك طنطنة الرجل. Do not let. طنطنة means the sound that an animal makes. Like, it has no, for us, meaning. But he's saying about a person that's reading Quran. لا يغرك طنطنة الرجل, meaning this person that is reciting Quran is just sounds that he's making. طنطنة, noises, hasn't penetrated his heart. So Kumail says, I know Amir al-Mu'mineen better than to ask questions. He says, I left it. But the fact is, how did he even know what was in my heart? He says, days went by, Battle of Nahrawan, the third civil war against Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, Kumail, follow me. As you followed Amir al-Mu'mineen, imagine, Dhul Fuqar, blood-stained, points at the floor on the battlefield and he recites that verse. He says, Kumail, أَمَّنْ هُوَ قَانِتٌ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ سَاجِدًا وَقَائِمًا. He says, I understood that this same person that recited the Quran all those years ago ended up fighting the Imam of his time. Do not let the practices elude you from the truth or trying to gain knowledge in order for us to apply it within this world and use as a guide. Amongst those of the utmost importance that knew the position of knowledge and how to gain it, in order for him to follow in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt, was a personality by the name of Habib. Habib that we commemorate tonight. And what do we know of Habib? Rasulullah, they would say in Medina, he looks at Mudahir. He says, Mudahir sees Rasulullah embracing a young boy. Mudahir looks at him, he says, Rasulullah, why do you embrace this man, this young boy? Why do you embrace this young boy? What has he done that you have that much affection and love towards him? He says, Oh Mudahir, I see the future. But right now what I saw is I see Hussein walking and I say this young boy picking the dust of where Hussein put his feet and putting it on his eyes. That personality grows up to be Habib ibn Mudahir. And that's why in Karbala you'll find when Imam Hussain is giving the banners to everyone. He's giving the banners out. When he's giving the banners, everyone's attained a banner, but there's one banner that remained on the floor. Ever a companion comes, they said, Can I have this banner, O Aba Abdullah? Honor me with this banner. He says, No, laha sahibuha. It has a particular person that owns this particular banner, that will raise this banner, that will be part of my army. But he is yet to come. They're still waiting. The fifth day, still waiting. Imam al-Hussain sends a letter towards Kufa. Now you know Kufa surrounded. No one's allowed in or out. There was great difficulty. Many people that joined the ranks of Imam al-Hussain disguised themselves in the army of Ibn Ziyad to just make it towards Karbala. Look at the difficulty. Imam al-Hussain gets a letter in Kufa. There is a knock at the door. Habib ibn Mudahir is inside. He opens the door, a letter's there. He says, This is a letter from Hussein, the son of Ali. Imagine what happens to Habib. Drops everything, runs to the door. Takes that letter that he knows Imam al-Hussain touched with his hands, begins to embrace it, places it on its eyes. Look at the first lines, just the lines that Imam al-Hussain wrote to see the tragedy in Karbala. The first line reads, Min al-gharib, from the stranger in the lands. Ila al-faqih, to the learned. You know, modern day marja. An imam calls you faqih. Min al-gharib ila al-faqih. He asks Habib ibn Mudahir to come to his aid. In Karbala, Habib is in a position where it's very difficult for him because everything is secured in Kufa. He says to one of his servants, take my horse, O servant of mine, and go towards the outside, the outskirts of Kufa. In the night, I will come towards you. If I do not come towards you, then you may go on your path. So they would say that Habib ibn Mudahir lets the servant go with the horse. In the middle of the night, this servant is with the horse. He's looking at the horse, it's getting late, Habib ibn Mudahir hasn't shown up. The servant all of a sudden looks at the horse, he says, "O horse of Habib's," he says, "I ask Allah that He allows me this. If Habib doesn't come, then Allah is my witness, I will mount your back and go to defend Abu Abdullah." Who is this? Habib, he is this as he's getting closer towards the servant. He says, "Oh Abu Abdullah, what personality are you that the free are chasing to attain martyrdom, and those that are servants and slaves also want to attain martyrdom?" He looks at the servant, he says, "You are free for the sake of Allah." He hops on his horse and he's about to go towards Karbala. Look at the words of the servant. The servant says, "Oh Master Habib, I've served you all these years, but why are you doing injustice to me?" He says, "What injustice? I've just set you free." He says, "What freedom is this when you go and fight alongside Hussein and you want me to remain alive while my master is massacred in Karbala? What freedom?" They would say there was a moment in Karbala when all of a sudden Hussein stands from the tent. The companions see Imam al-Hussein stand. They say, "Who has arrived?" From the distance they see a rider. As the rider comes closer, they'll begin to see it's Habib ibn Mudahir. Hussein is on his feet going towards Habib ibn Mudahir. Mudahir is on his horse. He comes towards Hussein. I want you to imagine Habib ibn Mudahir seeing Hussein is coming with his feet towards Habib. He's saying, "How am I on a horse? How is Hussein on his feet?" He throws himself on the back of his horse. The elderly Habib on the feet of Hussein embraces the sand around his feet. And then you see that all the companions surround them. The ladies, they hear a bit of noise occurring. Amongst the ladies that hear the noise is a sister of Hussein by the name of Zainab. Zainab asks Ali al-Akbar, "Ali, who has now joined our ranks? What's occurring outside?" Ali al-Akbar would say, "Ammati Zainab, the one that's joined the ranks is none other than Habib ibn Mudahir." Look at the words of Zainab. She would say, "The one that has come is our uncle Habib. Ammuna Habib has come to us." He would say, "Yes." Look at what Zainab says. Says, "Oh Ali, send a message towards Habib." What's the message? Zainab would say, "Habib, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah." Ali al-Akbar would come into the tent. He would see Habib sitting next to Imam al-Hussein alongside the companions. He would say, "Uncle Habib, I have a message from you. For you." He said, "What's the message and who is it from?" He says, "This message is from my auntie Zainab, oh Habib." Habib knows the rank of Ahl al-Bayt. He knows the personality of Zainab. He knows the position of Zainab. Upon hearing her name, he would throw himself. Ali al-Akbar would say, she says her salams to you, oh Uncle Habib. Habib is at that moment in such humbleness that he throws himself. He says, "Who am I that Zainab mentions me by name?" He would take from the sand and he would hurl it on top of his head. "Who am I that Zainab mentions me. They would say on the night before the calamity on the 10th of Muharram, a personality by the name of Hilal ibn Nafi' would go alongside Imam Hussain. He would want to protect Hussain. He would say, these people have no God, that they would attack him without anyone knowing. They would backstab him before the battle would start. So Nafi' would go toward, or Hilal ibn Nafi' would go towards Imam Hussain, trying to protect him. But he's seeing Imam Hussain do something that he's never seen before. He says, I saw Hussain walking and kind of searching within the sands of Karbala. He would pick up any sticks, any thorns, anything that was big. Hilal ibn Nafi' says, Imam al-Hussain, what is it that you're doing? Let me assist you. Why do you do what you're doing? He says, oh Hilal. He says, oh Hilal, after I am massacred in the way that I am massacred, they will come and attack our tents. When they attack our tents, they will burn them. When they burn our tents, that our women and children will run from one tent to another. Oh Hilal, I do not want any of the children to trip on these sticks. I don't want any of them to have a thorn in their foot. I don't want any of them to hurt themselves. He comes towards Imam al-Hussain as he enters the tent of Zainab. Upon there he hears Zainab speaking to Hussain, saying, oh Hussain, have you tested your men? Have you seen, will they leave you on the 10th of Muharram? Are they going to be by your side? After Hilal hears this, he runs towards Habib. Habib, our master Zainab has not been reassured of our allegiance. Oh Habib, she has said that I am unsure, will the companions be there or will they leave you? Habib stands up, he says, oh Ansar, follow me towards the tent of Zainab. We have to give her reassurance, make her heart steady, let her not question our position of defending the Imam, defending the Hussain. He would stand there in front calling out, Assalamu alaikum ya ahla bayt al-nubuwah wa ma'adin al-risala, O family of Rasulullah, we bid our salams to you. Hussain hears this. Zainab says there is people outside. Hussain says they haven't come for me. Oh Zainab, you're the one that's unsure about them. They're here for you. Hussain, do you give me permission to go outside? He says, yes Zainab, go and tell them, let them reassure you. They say Zainab doesn't just go out like that. She's wearing a hijab, but she wants to make a statement. She looks within her possessions. She takes a abba out. Wasn't any other abba. It was the abba of her mother Fatima Zahra. She would wear the abba of Fatima Zahra. She would go outside the tents and she would speak towards Habib. Habib would say, oh Zainab, we hear that you're unsure, that we will sacrifice ourselves for you. Know very well that these swords are unsheathed and we are not prepared to put them back unless that we have used them to kill the enemies of Allah. Know very well that no going back in their positions, lest we are martyred alongside Abdullah Al-Hussain. You see that Sayyidah Zainab speaks to Habib. Abbas, he's the voice of Zainab. Abbas from his tent runs out without a turban on his head, without anything on his feet. Upon hearing Zainab's voice, Zainab, what has brought you out? Why is it that I hear your voice? Zainab, you are our protection. They say that on the 10th of Muharram, as they're about to perform Salah, when they're about to perform Salah, you will find that everyone is surrounding Imam al-Hussain, trying to protect him of the companions. Of the enemy says the following lines. They say, oh Hussain, pray, for by Allah this prayer is not accepted from you. Habib is enraged. How dare you say such a thing? You think the salah of the son of Rasulullah will not be accepted and your salah will be? Therefore he goes out from his rage and strikes the man. He goes on to kill 64 other men until a moment comes. Habib ibn Mudahir is elderly. He's of those that have aged. You'll find everyone surrounding Habib ibn Mudahir. All of a sudden, they begin striking Habib until a person strikes Habib on his head. Habib falls towards the ground. They don't stop there. There is another person brings a spear and digs it in the chest of Habib. Hussein is seeing his childhood friend being massacred in such a manner. Hussein runs towards Habib, trying to attain him before the last moments of his life, but they do not give him a chance. One of the Zalimeen come, one of the oppressors come towards Habib and sever the head from his body. They take the head of Habib and they throw it towards Abu Abdullah. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. ماتم حسين. يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.